I saw his name pop up on my phone at 9:47 p.m. on December 18th, and my hands went completely numb. Marcus. My Marcus. The man I hadn't spoken to in 8 years. The man who'd left me 3 days before our wedding, leaving nothing but a note on our kitchen counter and a dead silence that had somehow lasted nearly a decade. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I sat there in my apartment with my phone vibrating against the coffee table, watching his name flash like some kind of cruel joke, and felt my entire body go cold. It was the middle of December in Chicago, and we were already getting those brutal, cutting winds that made the city feel like it was trying to freeze you from the inside out. But that wasn't why I was shaking. Let me back up. Let me tell you who I was before that call. My name is Jennifer Walsh, and I'm 31 years old. I own a small salon called Roots and Cuts on the north side of the city, near Lincoln Square. It's nothing fancy. 10 styling stations, 2 wash bays, a small waiting area with mismatched magazines from 2019, and a coffee maker that sounds like it's dying every single time someone brews a pot. But it's mine. I built it from scratch after everything fell apart, and I'm proud of it. I've been cutting hair since I was 22, started as an assistant at some chain salon in Pilsen, worked my way up, got my license, and spent 5 years at a mid-level place before I finally saved enough to open something of my own. The salon business is brutal, long hours, your feet kill you, and you're dealing with people who are stressed about how they look. But I loved it. I still do. There's something about making someone feel beautiful, watching their face light up when they see themselves in the mirror. It matters. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was good, stable, predictable in the way that felt earned, not boring. I had a small one-bedroom apartment on Sheffield Avenue, the kind with creaky hardwood floors and radiators that clanked at 3 in the morning. I had a cat named Milo, 15 years old, deaf as a post, with a raspy meow and the temperament of a grumpy old man who'd seen too much. I had a circle of friends from the salon and from neighborhood hangouts. I went to spinning classes twice a week. I had my routines, my rhythms, my small, ordinary, beautiful life. And then there was my family. My mom, Patricia, lived in Milwaukee, about 90 minutes away. She was retired from nursing and spent most of her time volunteering at the local library and calling me to check in. My brother Danny worked in software in the suburbs with his wife Keisha, and they had 2 kids. We did Thanksgiving together, usually at Mom's place. We texted in the group chat. We were normal. The point is, I had constructed something solid. I had made it through the wreckage of what happened with Marcus, and I had built something that worked. It was early December when things started to feel strange. I was at the salon, finishing up a color correction on one of my regulars, Mrs. Chen, who came in every 6 weeks for her roots. She was sitting under the dryer, reading a newspaper, and I was at the front desk going through the month's books, which, honestly, I hated doing. Numbers weren't my thing. I paid a CPA named Derek to keep everything straight, but I still liked to understand what was happening with my own business. My assistant, Talia, was sweeping up hair near the back station. She was 19, worked part-time while she was at community college, and she had this infectious energy that made the whole place feel less like work and more like a place where people actually wanted to be. "Hey, Jen," Talia called out, "you getting the holidays off this year, or are you doing the full December grind?" I looked up from my spreadsheet. "I don't know yet. Maybe I'll close for a few days around Christmas." "Why?" "Because you need to get a life," she said, grinning. "Seriously, you're always here, always working. Don't you want to, go out, have fun, meet someone?" I laughed. It was the kind of laugh you do when someone's touching on something real, but you're not ready to talk about it. "I have fun. I have a life." "You have a cat and a salon," Talia said, not meanly. "I'm just saying, you're gorgeous, you're successful, you're funny. You could literally be doing anything on a Friday night, and instead you're reorganizing the product closet." She wasn't wrong, but the truth was, I wasn't interested in that kind of thing. Not anymore. Dating felt like something that happened to other people, people who hadn't had their hearts completely demolished and had to rebuild themselves from nothing. I'd made peace with being alone. It felt safer. "I'm happy, Talia," I said, and I meant it. "That's enough. She rolled her eyes and went back to sweeping, but she was still smiling. That night, I went home to my apartment. Milo was waiting by the door doing his rasping meow thing, which meant he wanted dinner and also probably wanted to complain about the general state of his existence. I fed him, changed his litter box, and settled onto my couch with a glass of wine and my laptop. I had a show I was watching, some crime drama that I was way too invested in, and I was planning to spend the evening doing absolutely nothing. I was about 20 minutes into an episode when my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Jennifer, it's David Ashford. I'm not sure if you remember me, but I was a friend of Marcus's in college. I'm in Chicago for work and would love to catch up. Do you have time for coffee this week?" I read it 3 times, my brain not quite catching up with what I was seeing. David Ashford. I hadn't thought about that name in years. He'd been in Marcus's friend group back at Northwestern, one of those guys who always seemed to be around at parties and dinners. Nice enough. I'd seen him maybe a handful of times before everything imploded. Why was he texting me? How did he have my number? I didn't respond right away. Instead, I set my phone down and tried to focus on the show, but I couldn't. My mind kept circling back to that text. David Ashford. Marcus. Those 2 things weren't supposed to intersect in my life anymore. The next morning, I texted back, polite but vague. "Hi, David. It's been a long time. I'm pretty busy with the salon, but maybe a quick coffee sometime." He responded almost immediately. "Perfect. How about tomorrow at the Grind on Lincoln? Noon?" I agreed, even though every instinct I had was telling me not to. There was something off about the whole thing, but I told myself I was being paranoid. It was just coffee. It was just a coincidence. The Grind was one of those trendy coffee places that had opened up in the neighborhood about 2 years ago. It had exposed brick, string lights, and an aggressively millennial vibe. When I got there at noon, David was already sitting at one of the small tables by the window, 2 cups of coffee in front of him. He stood up when he saw me, and I got a clear look at him for the first time in almost a decade. He'd aged well, still fit, still handsome in that casual Northwestern fraternity kind of way. He was wearing a cashmere sweater and had the kind of tan that screamed either recent vacation or a tanning bed. His Rolex caught the light when he reached out to shake my hand. "Jennifer, God, it's so good to see you," he said, and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. I sat down, keeping my jacket on. I wasn't planning to stay long. "How have you been?" he asked, pushing one of the coffees toward me. "Good, really good. The salon keeps me busy. What about you? Where are you working these days?" He launched into a story about his job in investment management, something boring involving portfolios and quarterly earnings. I nodded along, sipping my coffee, which he'd apparently ordered as a vanilla latte. I didn't drink vanilla lattes. He should have asked. Halfway through his story, he paused and looked at me directly. "Look, I'm going to be honest," he said. "I'm not really here for small talk." My stomach dropped. "Okay." Marcus is back in Chicago. The coffee cup felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my hand. "He's been living in the city for about 3 months now," David continued. "He moved back for work. He's working with his father's firm, actually, commercial real estate development. It's going really well for him." Marcus's father, Richard Ashford. No, wait. Marcus's last name was Ashford. David's last name was Ashford, too. Oh, God. They were related. "David, I started, but he held up a hand. "I know this is weird. I know it's a lot. But Marcus wanted me to reach out first, to sort of ease you into this. He feels terrible about how things ended. He's been wanting to talk to you for years, but he wasn't sure how you'd react." How I'd react? I set my coffee down carefully. "David, Marcus left me 3 days before our wedding. He didn't even have the decency to do it in person. I found out from a note in my own kitchen." David looked genuinely uncomfortable. I know that was bad. But Marcus was young and he was scared, and his father," he stopped himself. "Look, it's complicated, but he's grown up a lot since then. He's actually getting married himself, which is why he wanted to reach out. He wants to make peace with his past before he starts his new life." The word married hit me like a physical blow. "Okay," I said, standing up. "This was a mistake. I don't want to hear this." "Jen, wait. Don't call me that. And tell Marcus that he doesn't get to unburden himself to me because he's starting a new chapter. He doesn't get that." My voice was shaking, and I hated it. I hated that after 8 years, his name could still do this to me. He made his choice. He left. We're done. I walked out of that coffee shop with my hands clenched so tight my nails were leaving marks in my palms. The rest of that day was a blur. I called in my assistant to cover the afternoon appointments, claiming I had a migraine, which wasn't entirely a lie. My head was pounding, and there was this awful buzzing sensation in my chest, like my heart had forgotten how to beat properly. I went home, climbed into bed with Milo, and tried to breathe. The thing about trauma is that it never really leaves you. It just sits there, dormant, waiting for the right trigger to wake it up. And David Ashford had been that trigger, coming at me with this news like it was something that should make me happy, like Marcus's redemption arc was somehow supposed to include me. But it couldn't, not after what happened. The whole situation felt dangerous now, like something was shifting beneath the surface of my carefully constructed life. And when Marcus called me that night, when his name lit up my phone at 9:47 p.m., I understood that the ground I'd been standing on was far more unstable than I'd ever realized. I let the call go to voicemail, but he kept calling, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew this wasn't over. He called 7 times that night. I watched my phone light up on the nightstand. Marcus, 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 and I didn't answer. Not once. By the 4th call, I'd turned the device face down and buried my head under the pillow, like I was still 17 years old and could make the world disappear if I just stopped looking at it. But I couldn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to the radiator clank and hiss, listening to the Chicago wind rattle my bedroom window, and I felt something shift inside me. Not fear exactly, rage. Clean, cold, focused rage. By the time the sun came up on December 19th, I'd made a decision. I called my brother Danny at 7 in the morning. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice rough with sleep. "Jen? It's early. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," I said, and my voice was steady. "I need a favor. A legal favor." There was a pause. "Okay, what kind of favor?" "Can you call your attorney? The one who handled your business contracts? I need to know if there's any statute of limitations on emotional damages, on betrayal, on someone deliberately destroying my life right before our wedding." Danny was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Jennifer, what happened?" So I told him. Not everything. I couldn't do that, not yet, but enough. I told him about David Ashford showing up with his Rolex and his investment portfolio, and his message that Marcus wanted redemption. I told him about Marcus calling all night. I told him about 8 years of rebuilding myself, brick by brick, only to have that man's name show up on my phone like a ghost I thought I'd finally buried. "Jesus," Danny said. "Jen, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was back in Chicago." "Of course you didn't. Nobody knew, and I want to keep it that way until I figure out what I'm going to do." "What do you want to do?" I thought about the question for a long time. I want to know if I have any legal recourse, and I want to understand why. Why now? Why, after 8 years of radio silence, is he suddenly so desperate to talk to me that he's enlisting his cousin to do his dirty work? "Okay," Danny said. "Let me call Robert. He's good. He'll know." Robert Kelvin turned out to be the kind of attorney who wore expensive suits and had an office on the 34th floor of a building in the Loop. Danny had set up a meeting for me at 10 on Friday morning, and when I walked into that office, my hands were shaking. Robert was in his 60s, with gray hair and the kind of calm, observant eyes that made you think he'd seen every version of human behavior and was perpetually unimpressed. He listened while I told him the story, the whole story this time. The engagement, the wedding invitations already sent, the dress hanging in my closet, the note on the kitchen counter. "And he's been silent since?" Robert asked. "Completely silent. Until this week. His cousin tracked me down at my salon and told me Marcus is getting married and wanted to make peace with his past." Robert leaned back in his chair. I'm going to be honest with you, Jennifer. Emotionally, you have every right to be furious. Legally, your options are limited. You could pursue a claim for breach of promise in some states, but Illinois isn't one of them. That statute is largely gone. My stomach sank. So there's nothing I can do. I didn't say that. He folded his hands on his desk. What I'm saying is that a lawsuit for emotional damages isn't the way forward. But there might be other avenues. Tell me, do you have any documentation of this? The note he left? Any communication since then? I have the note. I kept it. I don't know why. Good. And he's reaching out to you now. If he makes contact again, if he calls, texts, or tries to meet with you, document everything. Every single interaction. Can you do that? Why? Because, Robert said, if he's trying to contact you to assuage his guilt, there might be a pattern. And if there's a pattern, we might be able to establish that his behavior is becoming harassing. Illinois has strong harassment and stalking statutes, but we need evidence first. I nodded slowly. And if he keeps calling? Then you file a police report, and if it continues, we explore a restraining order. The word hung there in the office, concrete and final, a restraining order. The legal system's way of saying you're dangerous enough that the person you're contacting doesn't want you in their life. I don't think he'd want that, I said quietly. No, Robert agreed, most people don't, which is why the threat of it is often effective. I left his office with a folder of information about Illinois harassment statutes and a growing sense of clarity. I wasn't going to be a victim again. I wasn't going to let Marcus Ashford waltz back into my life and make me feel small and broken the way he had 8 years ago. If he wanted to contact me, fine, but I would be ready. The next time my phone rang, I answered. It was Saturday morning. I was at the salon, doing a cut and color for one of my favorite clients, a woman named Patricia, not my mother, but close to the same age, who'd been coming to me for 3 years. She was under the dryer when my personal phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked the message. It was from an unknown number, but I knew who it was before I opened it. Jennifer, I'm sorry for calling so much. I know this is unexpected. Can we please talk? Just once. I promise I'm not trying to hurt you again. I just need the chance to explain. My hands didn't shake. That was the important thing. My hands were steady as I opened my contacts, found the number, and dialed. Hello? His voice. 8 years of silence, and I heard it immediately. Older, slightly deeper, but unmistakably Marcus. Don't contact me again, I said. If you call, text, or try to reach me in any way, I will file a police report and pursue a restraining order. You will not like the legal consequences of that, and you definitely won't want the reputation hit when your new fiancé finds out why you're being sued for harassment. There was a long silence on the other end. Jennifer, we're done. We were done the moment you left that note. You don't get to come back and unburden yourself. You don't get to ease your guilt on my time. You made your choice, and I've spent 8 years making peace with it. Don't ruin that. I never stopped. I don't care what you did or didn't do. This conversation is over. I hung up and blocked the number immediately. Then I went back to Patricia's hair and finished her cut with hands that didn't shake and a smile that was only half forced. Everything okay, honey? Patricia asked when I took her out from under the dryer. Everything's fine, I said. Better than fine, actually. And it was true. For the first time in 8 years, I felt like I had taken back the narrative. I wasn't the girl who got left at the altar anymore. I was the woman who'd built something from nothing, who'd made a life that mattered, and who wasn't about to let some ghost from her past rewrite her story. But I underestimated him. 3 days later, I was closing up the salon at 7 in the evening. Talia had left an hour earlier, and I was alone, doing the end-of-day cash count and prepping for Monday. I didn't hear him come in until the bell above the door chimed. I looked up and felt my blood go cold. Marcus was standing in my salon. Not a text message or a phone call, but actually, physically there, in my space, in the place I'd built to be safe. He looked different from what I remembered. Better dressed, more put together, but also desperate. His eyes were red, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. You said don't contact you, he said, so I didn't. I just came in person. "Leave," I said flatly. "Get out of my salon." 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes to explain what happened back then. No. Jennifer, please. I've been carrying this for 8 years. I need you to understand that what I did wasn't about you. It was about my father and… I don't care. I stood up from behind the desk. I don't care about your father or your issues or whatever excuse you've constructed. You broke our engagement. You left me. And I moved on. So now you need to leave. I can't leave without telling you. You can and you will, or I'm calling the police. I pulled out my phone. I meant it, and he knew I meant it. Something flickered across his face, shame maybe, or anger. He started toward me and I didn't hesitate. I dialed 911. Chicago Police Department, what's your emergency? I need to report a man who is trespassing on my business and refusing to leave, I said, my voice steady. My name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm at Roots and Cuts on Lincoln Square. Marcus's face went white. Jennifer, don't. He's still here, I continued into the phone. Yes, I'll stay on the line. The police arrived in 6 minutes. 2 officers, a man and a woman, both professional and matter-of-fact about the situation. Marcus tried to explain that he was just trying to talk, that there was no malice intended, but the female officer, her name tag read Officer Rodriguez, cut him off. Sir, the business owner has asked you to leave. You've refused. That's trespassing. You need to come with us. They didn't arrest him, not technically, but they escorted him out and gave him a warning. And before they left, Officer Rodriguez turned to me. Do you feel safe? She asked. Not entirely, I admitted. He's been trying to contact me. I told him to stop, but he showed up here instead. Rodriguez nodded. You might want to consider a protection order. Come down to the district tomorrow if you want to file a report. We can document this incident. After they left, I locked the door and sat down at one of the styling stations. My legs didn't feel like they could hold me up anymore. I put my head in my hands and let myself shake for the first time since this had all started. Milo had been hiding in the back office the entire time. He came out now and jumped up onto my lap, his raspy meow the only sound in the salon. I held him and tried to breathe. The next morning, I went to the police district with Robert Kelvin. We filed a formal report about Marcus's harassment and the trespassing incident. And then, with Robert's help, I filed for a protection order. The court date was set for the following Thursday. I almost didn't expect him to show up. Some part of me thought he would just accept it, that he would understand that he'd crossed a line and move on with his life and his fiancée. But Marcus had never been good at accepting boundaries. That was the whole problem from the beginning. He showed up with an attorney, a woman in her 50s who looked expensive and competent and deeply unhappy to be there. The hearing was brief and brutal. The judge, a woman named Patricia Harriman, ironic given my client's name, listened while I explained the situation. I presented the note Marcus had left me 8 years ago. I presented the text messages and the phone records showing the multiple calls. I presented the incident at the salon. Marcus's attorney tried to argue that he was simply trying to reach out, that there was no credible threat, that he was just trying to make amends before getting married. Your Honor, the judge interrupted, the petitioner has made it clear that she does not want contact. The respondent has ignored that request and shown up at her place of business. That constitutes harassment under Illinois law. This court is granting the protection order. She looked directly at Marcus. You are hereby ordered to have no contact, direct or indirect, with Jennifer Walsh. You will not call, text, email, or approach her in any way. You will not come within 500 feet of her residence or her place of business. Violation of this order is a criminal offense. Do you understand? Marcus nodded, his face ashen. I need you to say it, the judge said. I understand, he said quietly. And just like that, it was over. I walked out of the courthouse on a cold December afternoon with Robert at my side, and I felt lighter than I had in days. Not happy exactly. The whole situation was still painful, but free. I had taken back control. I had stopped being a victim and become someone who set boundaries and enforced them. That night, I called my mother. "Mom, I need to tell you something," I said, and I told her everything. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I always knew that boy would be trouble," she finally said. "I tried to tell you, but you were in love." I laughed, despite everything. "You did tell me, multiple times." "Well, I'm glad you finally listened, and I'm proud of you for protecting yourself. That takes strength." "I don't feel strong," I admitted. "I feel angry and sad and like I wasted 8 years being afraid of running into him again." "You weren't afraid. You were healing. And now you've healed enough to stand up for yourself. That's what matters." I hung up and made myself tea and sat with Milo on the couch, and I thought about the 8 years in between. I thought about building my salon from nothing, about establishing myself as someone who mattered in my community, about the regulars who trusted me with their hair and their stories, about Talia and the way she believed in me, about my brother and my mother, and the life I'd constructed brick by brick. Marcus hadn't destroyed that. He'd tried, but he hadn't. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from a law firm. Marcus was contesting the protection order, arguing that it was excessive and was interfering with his right to free speech. I showed it to Robert, who barely glanced at it before tossing it aside. "He won't win," he said simply. "The judge made her ruling. Unless you want to modify the order, it stands. And frankly, Jennifer, I wouldn't recommend modifying it. This man showed a pattern of not respecting your boundaries. He needs to learn that actions have consequences." I didn't modify it. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in 8 years. I took the note Marcus had left me, the one I'd kept all these years, and I burned it. I stood in my apartment and held it over the sink and lit it with a match from the kitchen drawer. I watched the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash, and with it went the last piece of the girl I'd been when he left me. The salon was busy that week. Mrs. Chen came in for her roots. Patricia came in for her regular cut. Talia worked her shift and talked about her classes. Everything was normal and ordinary and beautiful, in the way that only really hard-won normalcy can be. On Friday, a young woman came in for a consultation. She was maybe 25, pretty in a fragile way, and she was crying. "My fiancé left me," she said, 3 weeks before the wedding. "I don't know how to move forward. I don't know how to be a person anymore." I sat down across from her and took her hands. "You're going to be okay," I told her. "It's going to feel impossible for a while. It's going to feel like the world has ended. But you're stronger than you think. And one day, you're going to realize that you built something beautiful from the rubble, and that man is going to be nothing but a footnote in your story." She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "How do you know?" "Because I've been where you are," I said, "and I'm still here." I cut her hair and colored it a rich auburn that brought out her eyes. When she looked in the mirror, she cried again. But this time it was different. This time it was the cry of someone beginning to recognize themselves. As she was leaving, she turned back to me. "Thank you," she said, "for understanding, for not telling me it would be fine, or that I'd find someone else, for just understanding." "You're going to be fine," I said, "not because of someone else, but because of you." 3 months later, in March, I got a letter from Marcus's attorney. He was withdrawing his contest of the protection order. He had also, the letter mentioned, decided to postpone his wedding. There was no explanation, but I didn't need one. I put the letter in a folder and filed it away. I didn't feel any triumph about his wedding being postponed. I didn't feel vindicated or victorious. What I felt was a kind of quiet resolution. He had made his choice 8 years ago, and I had made mine today. We would never have to see each other again. The protection order would expire in 2 years unless he violated it, and I chose to extend it. By that time, I hoped we'd both be too busy living our own lives to think about each other at all. Spring came to Chicago and the city thawed out. The salon got busier. I hired another part-time assistant, a woman named Keisha who was Talia's age, but with a steadier presence. The product closet got reorganized again. The radiators stopped clanking. One Saturday afternoon in April, I was closing up early because I'd promised myself a day off. As I was locking the door, a woman walked by on the sidewalk. She had red hair, the auburn kind I'd given to that young woman back in January, and she was smiling. Really smiling, like she meant it. I realized it was her, the girl whose fiancé had left her. "Hi," I said. "How are you doing?" She stopped and turned. Recognition flickered across her face. "I'm good," she said, and then, more firmly, "I'm really good, actually. I got promoted at work. I've been dating someone new, and he's actually kind." And I stopped thinking about what happened as the worst day of my life and started thinking about it as the day everything changed. "That's wonderful," I said, and I meant it. "It's because of you," she said. "You helped me understand that I could survive this, that I could be more than just someone's abandoned bride." After she left, I stood there on the sidewalk and felt something settle in my chest. This was why I'd survived, not just for myself, but so I could help people like her understand that abandonment doesn't define you, that heartbreak is survivable, that the worst day of your life can become the day you start building something better. I went home to my apartment and my cat and my life that I'd built with my own 2 hands. Milo was waiting by the door, doing his raspy meow. I picked him up and scratched behind his ears, and he tolerated it for exactly 3 seconds before jumping down and walking away. That night, I didn't think about Marcus. I didn't think about the note or the wedding that never happened, or the 8 years it took me to become the kind of person who wouldn't let someone else's cowardice define her. I was too busy living.